Welcome to the 5 p.m. August 8th, 2024 special staff budget presentation city council meeting. We do have a quorum, so I'll call this presentation meeting to order. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? And the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, would you please read the rules to speak?
The purpose of this meeting is to hold a city council workshop. Council will not take formal action on the agenda items. All individuals wishing to speak may do so under petitions from the public present. No sign-up card is required. Citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak. All exhibits being submitted to City Council shall be placed in the box on the table.
Thank you very much. City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. Assembled with us this evening is pretty much the entire executive leadership staff and staff. So should you have any questions during the presentation, we've got our experts here to answer any of those questions that you may have. And Tom's going to be flipping. We've only got 14 slides this year.
Yeah.
So next slide, please. This is the agenda that we'll be using. Start off with the strategic plan and the proposed budget. And again, this is a no action meeting. Your two public hearings will be held in September. This is the proposed budget. It's working document, so if there's any adjustments that need to be made, we will make them in between now and your first public hearing. And again, senior staff is here to answer any questions that you may have. I'm responsible to present an annual budget to you that's balanced. We've done so with this budget. Next slide. The vision of the city of Titusville. Our mission statement. These are your strategic goals and objectives that were established following a strategic survey as well as a session that we had. And you did add one goal, which is the community design. It's in the lower right-hand corner there. Next slide. The current budget environment that we're in, operating costs, we were trying to get our hands around operating costs. And due to inflation, our operating costs are up significantly, as well as everybody else's, about 29.7%. Property valuations have increased this year to 11%. Shared revenues from the state are also up 16%. Personnel costs, which includes pay adjustments as well as a cost of living adjustment, is at 7.2%. We do have an unfunded list of $13.3 million of capital needs that I'll address those towards the end of the budget. The budget priorities were set in January of 2025, and I'll go through these rather quickly. You've seen these several times, but should you have any questions on them, let me know. I'll highlight a couple of them. You'll see in the next slide our COLA that we proposed is 3.5%. And just as an FYI, as a kind of a launching point, the state's COLA that has already been implemented is 4%. Brevard County, which is not approved yet, but they're proposing a 4%. The school board is proposing a 3.5%. We're at 3.5%. The other cities that we've surveyed all range in the 3 to 5% range. Operating, we went in with an increase off of our 5-year plan of an 8% operating cost, and you can see that that's well below what is necessary to create this balanced budget. And the last slide is the end of the American Rescue Act. This will be the last year that we'll be able to use that $8.7 million. So we were able to get quite a lot out of that, both for community needs as well as infrastructure. This is the budget itself, and there were some changes to accounting, and the roads and street dollars as well as general construction have now been moved into the general fund. And Terry, if you need to explain that anymore, the dollar amounts for that, if you wish.
If you have any questions about that, those were two other governmental funds that we really weren't using them according to accounting standards. So they've been identified now in the general fund. So all those dollars are in there.
So the overall, which is your enterprise and general funds, is 146 million, and then your proposed general fund is 63 million. The highlights is a 3.5 cost of living adjustment. The capital needs that are addressed the infrastructure and technology. We held steady to the 6.7 miles of roadway resurfacing and a 3% increase to the city-paid employee health care, and then funding our OPEB liability at $1.5 million to offset our OPEB liability. This is the all funds again compared to years past. This goes 2021 through the proposed 2025. This is all funds, the expenditures. You can see where each one of those lies. And again, the enterprise fund is self-funding and it's a pay for service, whereas the general fund is levied off of taxes. Our organizational chart, a little less than 600 employees. We did combine and reorg Public Works and Water Resources into a Public Works department for efficiencies in especially field operations as well as engineering. So you'll see the far right, go back one if you would. The far right category has Public Works Utilities section, Public Works Operations section, as well as Public Works Engineering. And the rest of the org chart remains relatively the same. Staffing levels continue to increase. This is a 10-year look back. Back in 10 years ago, after the massive layoffs in 2008 through 2010, the city was down to 443 employees. So we're right close to 600 this year. We are deferring 18 requested FTE adds to mid-year. The steady increase helps to continue levels of service as well as addressing growth needs. The general fund, first off, personnel. You'll see where we have 5 FTEs added in this budget. They are all in the enterprise fund, so that does not affect your millage rate. We have deferred 18 FTEs to mid-year. You can see where those are located at the far right. Police and fire make up 10 of the 18, with 5 for police and 5 for emergency services. Police, we've been working on every year, at least 3 officers this year. We're looking at 5 to add to that, to their roles. This is where your general fund revenues come from, 36% from property taxes, utility taxes, as well as intergovernmental revenues. Property taxes, this is a nice, or property values. Years ago, the city of Titusville would see a 2 to 3% increase in property values. We were really happy about 6 years ago when we reached a 5% increase in property values. We were hovering around 8% over the last few years, which is very good. 10% is nice, and we hit 11% this year. That steady climb like that is a very nice curve. You don't want that to be going up and down, and you also don't want it to be going too steep. So most of the beachside communities averaged, when we were down 2 to 3% and a 5% being good, most of them were averaging 12%, and they're up in the 18 to 20% range now. Ad valorem revenues, of course, as your property values go up, your revenues go up. So this is, again, a nice steady turn. And Tom can attest to you when the 2008 through 2010 period was happening, it was not looking like this at all. The millage rates, as your property values go up, your millage rate should go down. You can see a nice steady downturn in your millage rate. The 2019-2018 period, we held it steady there because we were unsure about where our revenues were going to be as a result of COVID. So then you can see the substantial jump from 20 to 21. We brought it right back down. This operating millage is the lowest that we've had in 16 years. The general fund millage rate is proposed to be at 6.587 mils. This is 3.59% above rollback, which generates an additional $769,749 in ad valorem. And this is, again, the lowest millage rate in 16 years, and we are addressing the 29% operation inflation rate with the increase in that. This is a very interesting slide. This is the ad valorem per capita per resident. The city of Titusville has the lowest per capita per resident ad valorem in the whole county. The only one that's further left of us is Brevard County itself. And Brevard County levies taxes a little different than we do. They have several MSTUs, and like the road and bridges, ours comes out of general fund as well as some of our enterprise funds. They levy an MSTU for the road and bridges. So it's outside of their actual ad valorem. So they are still levying the same amount of taxes. It's just not shown as an ad valorem. This is a property comparison of millage rates. Our millage rate is on the right end of that because of our property values being much lower than a lot of the coastal communities. General fund revenues. The biggest revenue increase, and I'll go through this, we did have 115% transfers in as a result of the ARPA projects nearing completion. So we were able to recognize that money in this general fund revenue. So that's why you have a pretty substantial increase in revenues. The general fund expenditures, you can see in the next bubble, the public safety accounts for just about half of your general fund budget at 45%. Public works, non-enterprise is about 12%. That's the next. The expenses generally for public safety runs between 45 and 55%. So this year it hit right at 45%. The capital projects equal $3.3 million. These are the capital projects that you'll see proposed and the dollar amounts associated with these capital projects. Again, totaling $3.3 million in capital. Road resurfacing, we stick at 6.7 miles. You can see we've achieved that goal since 2014. Last year at mid-year, we were able to allocate an additional 3.8 miles of roadways. We did that specifically as a non-recurring to try to get ahead of the uncertainty of asphalt costs as well as petroleum costs. They're staggering actually, but we wanted to go ahead and try to get a little bit ahead of our roadways. So we were able to accomplish a little less than 10 miles this year. General fund expenditures, again, 3.5% COLA, 3% increase in health insurance, and a $1.5 million transfer into the OPEB trust fund. General fund expenditures, continue. We have a couple special revenues. The revenue funds are forfeiture and impact fees. So for public safety, $97,000 of those funds. We also have a special revenue called the CRA. The Brevard County portion of that is $330,000. The city of Titusville is $790,000. We're not completely sure that the $330,000 in Brevard County is accurate yet. So once that locks in, when they go through their budget hearing and budget cycles, Mr. Post will be back to you representing the North Brevard Economic Development Zone to let you know the expenditures proposed by that board representing the city. CRA has directed staff to look at these capital projects and the dollar amount associated with it. And then there's the operating costs of the CRA itself. The building inspection fund is healthy. As you might imagine, we have over 60 projects working right now. Debt service, the city is pretty debt adverse. So we have 3 bonds out currently. The 2005 bond will be at $684,284. It's 50% below the levied rate that we can generate if we need to. The 2009 series bonds will cost $120,949, and then the Titus Landing project, which is a commercial loan, is at $730,917, which is reimbursed by the North Brevard Economic Development Zone. Going through the enterprise funds, first off is solid waste. Solid waste is also combined with recycling. We've had those broken out in years past, but because it's easier to account for as one account itself. 3% transferred in for stormwater, and the increase in lease proceeds are at 77%. On to stormwater, increases in customer rates to accommodate the services. 18% increase, and we'll show you what that equals as we get further into the presentation. Stormwater Capital Fund, Member Stokel, you asked during the setting of the rate what the capital projects were involved. As an example, the capital last year, 2024, was $124,000. This year it's $636,000, and that's equipment, machinery, as well as maintenance projects. The second, the operating itself, is up a little over 3%, and the rest is debt service. So hopefully that answered your question. Yeah. Solid waste, residential, these are the stormwater and solid waste proposed. The stormwater utility itself is an 18.5% increase, which annually per resident will be $21.30. Solid waste is an annual increase of 7.5%, or $16.44, and the dumpster, of course, is for commercial. So the monthly increase is $1.37 per resident. Stormwater comparisons, we are on the far right side. We do invest a lot of money in our stormwater system as per our citizens' requests. Solid waste comparisons, we're always in the middle to low end, so you can see where we are currently and where we're proposed to be. Commercial, again, in the middle to the far left in our comparisons of our peer cities. The marina itself is holding steady. They do have a waiting list. Increases about 16%, and then we're also overall increase of charges equaling that 16.8%. We did see an uptick in diesel and fuel sales this year. Water and wastewater revenues, you will have the rate consultant come in during your first budget workshop or your first budget hearing to discuss the proposed 5% increase. You remember we locked this in for 3 or 4 years so that there's a steady predictability to what that is, and it also helps with our bond rating. Water and wastewater capital, next slide, about $7.5 million. The proposed rate change of a 5% increase annually is $17.52, and wastewater is a 5% increase, again at $35.64. So monthly for water, it's $1.46, and for wastewater, it's $2.97 for a $4.43 monthly charge. Our comparison slide, we don't have all of the other cities' rates yet, so what we're using is their last year's rate if we don't have their current rate. So we suspect that once those rate increases are added to the other cities, that the city of Titusville will move further to the left with our rates. This is an additive slide this year. We decided to combine all of the utilities of what you're paying for your utilities, be it solid waste, recycling, and water and wastewater. So if you combine all of those, and we compared that to our peer cities, we still are relatively in the middle of the pack, knowing that the other cities have not advertised their rate increases yet. So I think we will move further to the left on this slide. Internal services, these are the services that are charged. Total in fleet is up about 14%. The proposed fleet budget is $5.6 million. Information technology is a 21.6% increase. This proposed budget totals $3.7 million. Self-insurance is doing all right. No proposed increase to dental, and the loss fund is a 2.9% increase. Internal services, again, the cost of living increase and the premiums that the city paid portion of 3%, and the additional state required that we hold in reserve is good, steady there. Healthcare trends over the years. We do have a couple catastrophic events going on right now that we will probably capture either at mid-year, depending on where those cases are at, going beyond self-insurance and or in the 26 budget. This is your capital projects, the capital overlay of equipment. Information technology equipment. And the big one is the vehicles. For those of you that have been on council for a while, fire engines a few years ago, a typical fire engine was between $650,000 and $750,000. A fire engine this budget year is $1.2 million. We're requesting 2 due to the long lead time to get these. These are financed, so it's taking us about 2 years to get a piece of equipment from the time we order it. Another comparison for you is police vehicles were pretty steady for a number of years, between $50,000 and $53,000. The last 2 years, they've been $73,000 per unit. So that's a 20% increase. And when you're purchasing 18 of them, it is a substantial increase. And the other vehicles, nothing got cheaper. So we'll run through the list of vehicle purchases. And again, the total of the vehicle purchases is $7.69 million. Unfunded priorities is next. We have chipped away quite a bit at it. Before we go into this, council asked us to look at the cost of a public safety complex. That's $45 million in today's dollars. Public Works facility is at $30 million in today's dollars, as well as City Hall at $70 million in today's dollars. None of those are listed in your unfunded $13.5 million. I just want to remind you that those are out there, and we are currently sitting in the oldest city hall in Brevard County. Unfunded priority list is listed here, again, $13.3 million. Brings us to almost the conclusion. The approved millage rate was set tentatively at 6.817 mils, which generates $1.625 million over the current operating millage rate that we're working off of FY 24. So the increase above the rollback rate is 3.5 percent, and that 3.59%, which generates a little over $700,000, $769,000. With that, any questions of staff or me? And we'll get into the public comments and then your deliberations.
Any questions from council to staff or city manager, and then we'll go to public comment. Member Cole.
Yeah, I do have a question about the information technology area of it. Have we done any extra efforts to try to keep hackers out of our, I mean, we've had problems at the hospital, and, I know these problems are around, but do we have any additional funds that are required for us to do that?
We recently hired a consultant to actually try to penetrate our system and also give us recommendations. We did replace the firewall, and I can tell you that we are constantly bombarded hundreds of times a day by would-be hackers. And that, Justin here? Justin, why don't you explain some of the nuances?
So in the last year and a half, we've actually done outside testing to verify where we're at with our systems. In that testing, we've also increased and replaced all of our firewall systems to the top right quadrant of all that is available to us. We've also increased cybersecurity training for all city personnel and have moved to newer echelons in the Microsoft systems to verify that we are as ready as possible for all the things that are happening. And we've created multiple contingency plans in the event that anything is introduced in our system that is undesired.
So y'all remember you had to take the same cyber training as staff did too, so.
Member Stokel.
Yep. I have a couple questions. One is, I feel like one of my goals when I first got on council was to hopefully increase revenue across the city so we can spread out the tax burden for our citizens. Could you explain a little bit of how that works with us lowering our millage rate? And like, are some citizens going to see lower taxes, for instance? And then how does that work when we talk about, new projects that we've approved where we are increasing our revenue from that tax base? What does that mean for our overall budget and citizens?
So when you see the property valuation line, that's the property values of all of our properties in the city of Titusville that are currently on the tax rolls. So when things get added to the tax roll, that the valuation of that continues to go up. That's why that nice steady line is there. Now, a house that finishes today won't come on the tax rolls until next year. So, but you're right, as new projects come on, new additions to the tax roll, that increases our property values. And then, as I've been trying to do over the past several years, is bring the millage rate down.
Right. So is it safe to say then that some citizens will see a tax decrease because we are lowering our millage? And then part of that I can't remember what it is exactly, the 3 and some change. 3.59% tax increase. That increase is coming from some of these newer projects or feeding into that revenue, as well as depending on if they're part of Save Our Homes or not. Some of them may if their property value went up. But I think some of them are going to see a tax decrease.
For those properties that the actual value has gone down, as you know, the homestead limits the actual appreciation to 3% of the tax value. So there is a cap on how much it can go up.
Okay. For
homesteaded individuals.
Okay. And then my other question is for probably primarily Kevin. On slides 34 and 35, where we were talking about the capital projects, I was just wondering if you could explain some of these projects. One that stood out to me, Park Avenue turn lane. I'm on Park Avenue a lot, so I'm curious about that one. And then there were some riverfront park improvements. I just wanted to know more of what we were doing there. I know we've talked about Public Works building expansion, because I know that building needs some work. And then the asphalt road reconstruction, just if you can kind of highlight some of those items on there.
Sure. So we've had Riverfront Park improvements on there for quite a few years. We've never been able to fund it. We have other properties, mainly at the end of Harrison Street, that have never had a development done for it for park-wise. So this would get some concept plans done on the remaining parks that are purchased during the riverfront acquisition that haven't had any work done on them yet. So asphalt reconstruction, we have a number of roads in Baker Subdivision, Pine Ridge, others that are past the point that the roads can be milled and paved. Their base needs to be replaced. And that too has been asked for about the last 2 years. So we're getting that funded in next year's budget to rebuild those roads from the ground up for the longevity. The turn lane on Park Avenue is a concept for some congestion that was found in some of the various studies into Park Avenue Baptist due to them operating as a school. There's
Okay.
no turn lane there now, so the left turning movements do clog the road up. So this would be a concept review of that to add a turn lane.
Okay. And then this one might be for Brad, the mobility plan project.
Oh, no, that's mine too.
Oh, it is. Okay, okay.
So a couple of years ago.
We're trying to give you a break, Kevin.
No, a couple of years ago, the planning department had a mobility plan created that covered everything from bike lanes to intersection improvements. So this is just a funding step to get some of those projects completed. We're doing the sidewalk infill through the impact fees this year. So this is another step in getting mobility plan projects done, whether it be in the bike lane improvements, pedestrian crossing improvements, so forth within that plan.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all my questions. And then I would just say to council, as we're looking through this, it looks like with the tax increase, it's a little over $700,000. So if we're looking to potentially go to rollback, I would anticipate us potentially moving some of these capital projects and holding off on them to potentially mid-year in case we do see, typically during mid-year, we do have extra revenues coming in, and then we could fund them at that point, or we put them off for a year. If we did want to go to rollback, potentially move some of these or hold off on them. That's the only thing. I know there's unfunded list on here, but I don't really want to go over what our proposed is at this time.
Member Nelson. I'm sorry.
So let me tell you a little bit about why we're funding all these projects that have kind of been put on the back burner for a while. The city has a really healthy unassigned fund balance, and so removing any of these projects won't actually change the millage. They're being funded with fund balance as opposed to like money that we've already set aside as opposed to millage. So millage isn't really paying for these projects.
Okay, so to clarify, the budget as it's built with the additional 700, that is to fund not these items, essentially.
Operations and maintenance.
Okay, so if we were
personnel
to
costs.
potentially go to rollback, what would we look at potentially removing? If we were,
Anything operating or personnel.
so no projects.
Right, no projects. They're not funded with any millage increases this year. They're funded with money that we already have as part of the balance. So as every year over the past several years, the city's unassigned fund balance has grown to be quite healthy. And so this was the year that, after talking to the city manager, some of these projects that have been on hold for a while, this is a way to fund some of those projects. You can only use fund balance for one-time non-reoccurring costs.
Okay.
So that's what these were chosen. There are other projects, obviously, but these were the priority projects that staff gave to us.
So when you say like operating, it's like when we try to do, 6-7 miles of roads, we would have to look at potentially going down to 5 and those types of things that are
Yes.
reoccurring.
Yes.
Okay, fair. Thank you.
Now, Member Nelson.
Okay, so, and I would just remind us that part of the reason we got to where we were in 2016 is because we didn't fund anything for years. So I think I always like the middle of the road. I don't want to go crazy, but I also recognize that when we put things off and say, no, and try to do it 5 years from now, the cost is going to go up, and we're going to have problems like we have with our lagoon. So, but I would like to have Kevin go through all of the, since you started, all of the capital projects and explain them because, Kevin's just sitting there, so he might as well talk.
He looked like he was really anxious to talk. Yeah. About to leave.
No, you can't leave yet.
All right. So I guess we'll start at the top then.
Please.
Public Works building expansions is the expansion of our facility at Singleton. This is another drop in the bucket for that, but we have over the years, working through a concept plan now that will lead to a final replacement of our facility at that site.
So, Kevin, what will that allow us to do? What will that pay for?
So the concept that we have finishing now, the site we've broken up into multiple buildings, some of which will not be funded by the general fund, some of which will come from fleet or the enterprise funds. But this would likely get us the starting footprint of the first general building.
Okay.
And we hope the fleet garage soon after. So,
I gotta say, you guys really
Suck
need
it
it,
up.
deserve it.
We've been saying that since we got here.
I know.
So Pritchard House renovations, right now, the roof, we patched it this year due to a leak. If you've seen the roof of it, it's getting old. This is to bring a consultant on board because the historic building's not as easy for us to deal with, to start the process of the next step of the following year, funding a construction for the renovation of the roofing of the Pritchard House.
Okay, I think you have to talk louder.
Sorry. So Pritchard House is for primarily design of their roof system replacement. Because it is a historic building, we had a leak this year. We had that fixed with one of our contractors, but the whole roof is in need of replacement. So the following year in '26, we'll be looking to fund that construction side. This is to get the first step of that done. Heritage Moore, similarly, due to time, has got to the point that it needs renovations. So this is to bring a consultant on board to look at the building again, see what needs to be done, whether it's exterior wall improvements, windows, so forth, for funding in future years. Fire tower, it's one we've had for a few years, the expansion of the fire tower facility beyond the tower itself into the land beyond that the city owns to give fire more area to train in and use, make usable site the rest of their facility.
We were very close to making our ISO from 2 to a 1, and one of the deficiencies was the area at the fire training center. I mean, it's a good facility, but it needs to be expanded to do other things.
Okay.
We covered Riverfront Park and asphalt, road reconstruction, new sidewalks in general. That'll be filling in sidewalks on local streets. That's not available to the impact fee program because they're local streets. That's only allowed on arterial collectors. Whiteway expansion is continuing to look at the expansion of the Whiteway system, replacement of it. Covered mobility plan, gateway landscape improvements. We have bids in now for the first 2 gateways. This is to bring, if we want any additional gateways looked at for the city.
Let me go back. The Whiteway expansion, will that actually pay for it? Or are we talking about?
No, this is another step in design because that system's going to be, $5 to $10 million range.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Gateway reconstruction during the mobility study and the subsequent sidewalk studies, there's a section of Harrison Street the consultant felt was too sharply curved. It needs to be rebuilt to lessen its curvature to make it safer near the Park Avenue intersection. So that's to get the next step in that project. Traffic signal improvements. Our staff has seen about 2 of our span wire signals that need to have the wires replaced in them completely. So that's what has been identified by our signal staff. We covered a Park Avenue turn lane. Underdrain improvements, we funded some underdrains with ARPA in Lasita and Shangri-La that were effective at removing some of the groundwater intrusion into the road base. So this is continuing that program. The older parts of town that don't have drainage really to upgrade and help protect the road base, help sustain the roads. Traffic calming, traffic safety kind of go hand in hand as we have requests for calming improvements in neighborhoods or we identify safety needs related to traffic accidents or citizen requests. This gives us the funds to implement those improvements. And then concrete roadway is replacement of some of our concrete streets that are over in the Queen Street area, also in the older historic area not funded by the CRA, helping upgrade and improve some of our concrete streets that are in need of slab replacement.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I do too. Good job. Good question. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I keep a lot of books and track the records from year to year, and I first off want to applaud staff for keeping everything basically in alignment with the national economy. As inflation has gone up, you have monitored, and you came through COVID, all of the 21, 22, 23, when everything was going to hell in a handbag. You stayed pretty steady. And I went all the way back to checking all of the booklets all the way back to 21. And each year, it has basically maintained. You've did a lot better than the national economy in controlling everything. And as the prices has gone up, you still govern the dollars that you have had to stay within the budgets that as we adjust to mid-year and so forth. And it looks very, very, very good to me as I have monitored. I applaud you. And as far as the general capital projects, with the trends that we have been seeing over the last 5 years, if you don't use those dollars now, the dollar value is going to go down. And that's what's so important. If we look at the goods that are in the grocery stores and everything, the value of a dollar from 2021 has changed quite a bit to 2024. And I don't see that that's going to be any different as we go. And some of the individuals that I know believe that it's going to be worse. But so if we're going to do what we need to do, let us allocate those dollars and make them useful and lock everything in now so that as things change, if they get better, good. If they do not get better, as far as the cost of fire engines and police cars and street sweepers and pumps to transfer water from point A to point B, if the prices fall, great. If they don't, we're still prepared to do what we need to do for the citizens of our city. And I think, again, I applaud the staff for keeping everything as moderate as you possibly can. And I don't see a whole lot of highs and a whole lot of lows, but good management, what I think. And I kind of learned that in government management, if you can keep it steady and not let it go too fast, you're doing the best job that you can with all of the other variables that exist. Thank you.
All right, City Manager, I just wanted to ask, I know we're deferring 18 hires until later. I think you commented on a little bit of that. Can you be, not more specific necessarily, but give me an idea of where the 18 personnel
If you
are
could pull
not?
that slide up. And 10 of those were public safety, 5 firefighters and 5 police
That part
officers.
I got.
And we've committed to a minimum of 3. In order to balance the budget today, going into this budget without increasing the millage rate beyond what we already have, we weren't able to fund those for a full year. We're pretty confident based on the previous 2 mid-years that we will be able to bring those on. We'll reevaluate these 18 to make sure that these are the must-haves, not the need-to-have kind of things, and with, of course, public safety being at the top of our priority list.
So your mid-year report will tell you if you're going to make those hires this year.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Council, anything else for staff? All right, public comment, obviously it will relate to this fiscal budget, and it'll be a 3-minute deal. So do we have cards? Is that how that works today, or do we just have them come up like public?
Yes, sir. No card.
Okay, so just come up at your desire. Oh, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Stuart Buchanan. I'm a resident of the city of Titusville. My working mailing address is P.O. Box 1545, Titusville, Florida 32781. As you know, I've come before you in previous budget hearings, but usually a little too late in the process. So that's why I'm here tonight. I've asked you, thank you for handing those out. As I've asked in the past, for you to raise the millage rate. My annual taxes are incredibly low. I get to live on the water, enjoy full services of being in the city limits, and my annual taxes for the year are less than my lunch tab for 1 month. So I understand that asking to raise the millage is a hard ask. It's very hard to do that. And so I would like you to consider on the unfunded projects list, which most residents don't even realize there is an unfunded priority list. These are priority items that staff identified. But to manage to balance the budget with the millage rate, they're not included. And since I know that asking you to change the millage rate is a big ask, I would ask you to consider to simply take debt service, in other words, bond the 13.5 million. Your debt service right now is extremely low. You have taken on very little debt, and get all these projects funded. They're all capital projects. You'll notice that one-time expenses, not operating and reoccurring. The other, and if that's not possible, then finally I've addressed a letter to each of you with 5 projects which total $500,000 to be put back in the budget, whether they're funded through contingency reserves. In particular, there's $300,000 for stormwater quality projects. There's $100,000 for the police department for their recruitment. $20,000 for the 4-seater Rhino. That's because of a police call I personally witnessed that involved some of our officers trying to chase someone through a swamp on foot. $20,000 for the e-bikes, and finally $60,000 for neighborhood services for the generator, so that they can provide services both during and after a storm event. Again, Mayor and City Council, I know it's very hard to change millage rate, but with the debt service being as low as it is, if you would bond these projects, that's $13.5 million, get all these capital projects knocked out. All of them have already been identified as priority projects. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for allowing me to speak this evening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Member Stokel?
Yes, this might be a question for staff. Since we already set our millage rate, we cannot raise it. We can only lower it at this point.
That's correct, because the trim
Okay.
notice has been put out.
Okay, so that being said, I also think another option for us would be potentially at mid-year, if we have increased revenue or anticipate it, this would be something we could look at as well.
And you could use the revenues just to pay the first premiums on the bond, if you bonded it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Nelson?
This is another Kevin question.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, Kevin. Water quality projects, what would those be?
What we looked at for the unfunded is the delta between what we're funding in the budget and what we project and need on an ongoing basis. So right now, the water quality, that would be just another round of baffle boxes or tree boxes. That's not specific to a project right now. As you know, we apply for grants constantly.
Yeah.
So it would just be in addition to those already incoming grants and so forth.
So you would take that 300,000, get matching grants, and then go for it?
Yeah, normally we take whatever we get funding wise, and we're just using that to fill the gaps, whether it's in soil or DEP that has a gap.
Okay.
And hopefully we fill it all with grants, so we don't have to use any of the stormwater utility fees. But we do fund a water quality project every year.
Okay, great.
All right, next up. I don't say next card on this one.
Trent Mansfield, Titusville resident.
Hey, Trent.
Before I forget, his taxes may be low because he bought his house a while ago, but father-in-law's house is pretty cheap, but those that have bought their house in the past couple of years, their taxes are not cheap. I'd also like to rebut this city manager. He said state employees got 4%. That's not true. We got 3%. And once again, homesteaded houses can only be raised 3%, but non-homesteaded houses can be raised 10%. And once again, it will be passed on to the renters. Last year, Member Robinson stated that he would hope that it wouldn't be passed on to the tenants, that the landlords wouldn't pass it on to the tenants. Well, as any business, everything is passed on to the consumer, to the tenants. So I would ask that you wouldn't pass it on to the taxpayers. Y'all have raised taxes 7 times out of the past 8 years. Some years over 9%. The lowest in the past 8 years has been like 3.5%. And then you didn't raise it in 2020 because of COVID. Kind of disappointed that y'all are not live streaming tonight, that y'all are only audio recording tonight. So Talk of Titusville is now watching via my phone, and I'm sure the outreach will be more. And the solid waste in the water is only. And it's only, so, and I've said that before. I've done a little bit of work since I've been off of work the past couple months. Not bashing the city, but just putting facts out there online, on Facebook. And it's constant, no raising taxes. That's what everybody wants. They would like a break. So, I got a minute left. I can only say it so many times. It's gonna go to the renters. Yes, some people's taxes will go down, but non-homesteaded properties, whether it be rentals or businesses, their taxes are gonna go up, and it's gonna continue to push up prices or whatever in the city. So I know it's hard. But y'all are elected officials and y'all are elected to represent the people. So I'm not gonna sit here and beat the same horse that I've beat every year in the past, but that's pretty much all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Next up. Nobody up? I can't say call the card. Okay. All right, well, oh, never mind.
People are here and not speaking.
I missed you. Who are you?
Hello, hello. Tony Schiffolo, Tropic Street, Historic, Norwood House. I find this to be a very interesting process, and I just want to follow on Trenton's, it's only, with the water and the other $37.74 a year, it's only $90.90 a year. I'm only on a fixed income. I'm only on a fixed income, as are many citizens in Titusville. So when it's only, and it's only $1 more here, it's only $3.50 at the gas tank, it's only going to be $90.90 more. Although I do appreciate the fact that in the budget, we are maintaining a lot of things, but I want to watch out for the riverfront park improvements, especially since the bond referendum is retiring the bond referendum to buy property along the Indian River Lagoon. And I worry about when Mr. Cook mentions the Harrison Street property, the Gateway to the Stars. Don't let them improve that park. Don't let them do anything to that. It is such a beautiful piece of property as it is, with a natural shoreline, no parking places, lots of grass, which maybe should be more native-friendly plants. Be careful in these unfunded projects that we look to do. I agree with sidewalks and street repairs. The citizens of Titusville agree with that too. They don't want the taxes to be increased. They're worried about the water and the Indian River Lagoon. Those should be, and we should have educational programs to let the people know what you are doing to save the Indian River Lagoon, the 11 projects Mayor Diesel is so proud of.
12 now.
12 now?
12 now.
See, education is important.
You're right.
I try to
You
keep
are
up,
right.
and I'm not even there.
You are right.
So, just be careful with us. Just only this, just only that, just only $90.90. Thank you.
Well said, Tony.
So,
Anyway, go ahead.
Can I?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I missed
so
you.
Tony, can I say this? I went kayaking about 10 days ago with a bunch of kids.
You still sore?
It was, yeah, no, I'm not sore anymore, but 3 hours of kayaking, I was dying. And what I saw around Bird Island and Hollover Canal, there was grass every place. And somebody actually sent Laura Lee some pictures of Flounder Creek, seagrass all over the place.
Good start.
Good start. I talked to a guy yesterday who is in charge of the construction for Parish Park. And he had gone out with St. John's Water Management Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And there's seagrass. He said it's just starting. He says it's bricks. But they wanted to do a beach renourishment project.
Yeah.
But they can't do it they have to go around the seagrass. So, sometimes, I think the three of us, that was one of our primary focuses was let's fix the infrastructure. Let's make sure it doesn't get to the lagoon. Let's make sure the water going to the lagoon is clean. And it's taken 8 years, but it started.
Yes, I mean, you have many projects that we are working on, and I really think that having educational workshops for the public, I mean, you can just put it in the talking points and you can put it on the website, but people don't see that, and going out into the community and letting them know what's really going on will help. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
And I was only sore for 24
You
hours.
couldn't move. All right, council, anything? I know we've talked and said some parts already, but this is our part. Anything you want to say or add that we've already not said? Or all right, city manager.
Yeah, Vice Mayor and I were speaking this morning, and some of the things we forget about. 10 years ago, the minimum wage was $8.75. And we blew through that. It's my low guys right now are 16 something. So in 10 years, doubling the low end. And of course, that goes throughout the whole system. So that's an example of operating. And we shared the example of the cost of vehicles and the time associated with getting those vehicles. So vehicle replacement is a necessity. And you saw on that list what replacement vehicles were there and what new vehicles there. And the majority of those are actual replacement vehicles.
Yeah, a good point. And in our discussion and tonight, when you express that the operating costs are up 29.7% due to inflationary pressures, that makes it tough. And then you've got folks out there that are very focused on, we need sidewalks. Our kids don't have sidewalks. We have the one guy come in, rightfully so, that we have sidewalk issues behind Titusville High School that we need to remedy. And then, of course, we have, the flip side of that is, hey, you got to spend money for that. So I get it. It's a tough call. And I think that you guys do a good job, as Vice Mayor said, of trying to maintain and stay away from the ups and downs and try to at least keep it level. Continue to do the best we can. Obviously, I'd love to see us say we're going to have an 8% tax deduction. But then again, you're not going to have your garbage picked up but once a month. But anyway.
Yeah.
But that being said, anything else from you? You good?
Anybody?
Yes, go ahead.
And I would like to, again, thank the staff. You have a budget workshop and then you have the 2 public hearings, but the staff begins our budget process back in January, and it's an elaborate process that we work on throughout the year. And once you approve the budget, when we take off in October, we actually have a few months and then poor Terry has to go through the CAFR, which is the audit during that time. So it's a continual process with the staff, and the staff does a great job working together to make sure the priorities that council sets are achieved.
Member Nelson.
I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you guys for putting the Riverfront Park on that list of projects. And not really hoping that it's anything elaborate, but it's been a city property for 20 years. And I think it's time we do something with it. So thank you.
And I'll end it with thank you for the folks that spoke and those that are here, but those that spoke, there's always something I take away, and I appreciate that. With that, meeting.
Next, the 2 public hearings will be held on 12 September as well as 26 September, and that'll be the final budget hearing on the 26th for adoption.
All right, now with that, meeting adjourned.